guys, so let's go. I like the momentum we're building. Even before we started, we got talking. Yeah, that's great. We got an interesting panel now. We're going to talk about the future of money and what it means. What money means to each one of us can be very different. It is in one of those phases where the interpretation is in a transitionary phase, and who am I surrounded by? The best of the creed to talk about this. So we are going to talk about Libra, central bank digital currencies, and future of money. I'll start with you, Gabby, because you've been in this space. You know, you've dealt with central bank digital currencies. So let's go.
Okay. Well, I mean, my view might be a bit skewed.
Okay.
Because I come from two different worlds, and
right.
on one aspect.
Yeah.
While I did found a company that created and invented the subject around central bank digital currencies, I'm very much a Bitcoin maximalist, which is surprising to many considering what Bit.com does.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's just my personal view.
Absolutely.
It doesn't reflect that of Bit.
Yeah.
Bit is very much focused and believes in central bank digital currencies.
Yeah.
But I believe that the future of money is looking closer to something like Bitcoin than it is central banking or a centralized based entity. And I think what we are in store for is the rise of innovation and disruption in the monetary systems and the financial world. And we're currently seeing that to this day. We're seeing the rise of money of the people.
Yeah.
Which is decentralized cryptocurrencies driven on a free market perspective. We're seeing the rise of central bank digital currencies where almost all of the 186 central banks around the world are starting to pay attention to this topic and have already started, if not have been launching their own pilots. And we're seeing the rise of private corporation-based money where you had things along the lines of USD Tether in the early days, and now you're having companies like Facebook who are live at this very moment in front of Congress talking about their Libra project.
Yep. Very interesting perspective. The CEO of Bit.com, who initiates and facilitates the creation of central bank issued digital currencies, is a true believer or a Bitcoin maximalist. Why? He believes in the money of the people. Now to you, sir, what do you make of that? How can you bridge that gap? I mean, can there be a dichotomy between central bank issued currencies or fiats as they are known to a corporate issued currency or to the money of the people as a maximalist would like to call it?
Yeah, if Gabrielle is a Bitcoin maximalist, I would be a free mark maximalist.
Right.
I would be saying that the future is really about private alternatives to government sanctioned digital currencies.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a risk inherent in a private venture, and risk and reward are part and parcel of being a human being. It's facing these risks and then benefiting when we take them if we make intelligent decisions. But I think that in order to really take advantage or fulfill the potential of improved quality of money, that we're really going to need to see private sector money that can actually have inherent value behind it. For instance, I'll use a U.S. dollar example.
Okay.
People would say, "Oh, but it has the full backing of the U.S. government." Well, it has their backing or their endorsement, but it doesn't have. If you go to the Federal Reserve or the Treasury and say, "Here, what will you give me for my $10 bill?" They'll give you 2 5s at best, and they won't. They don't. There's nothing behind it. This all went away. The value behind money went away with the demise of Bretton Woods agreement in the mid '70s, when it previously had a gold backing.
Yeah.
So, but this gold backing, and I'll just sum up with this: from the period of the beginning of the United States in the latter 18th century to the early 20th century, there was about 5 generations where you could buy a pound of coffee for about the same money through that whole 125 or so year period. And this meant that if you made money and you left it to your descendants, then they would have this money at the same value that you made it at. If they went on and did this for their descendants, then money would continue to have that value, and you could, and that was a different society. Today, if you were to leave your money to 5 generations, at the end, it would be worthless, whatever it is that you left them. So I think that a restoration of value in money is an opportunity that private sector market delivers can bring to the space and improve the quality of money.
Very interesting perspective. So what I take from that is, can the private sector initiate something that can enable inflation-related diminution in value? That's one aspect of looking at it, I guess. But before we go there, I want to bring in a very interesting perspective that Jason has brought to me more often than not every time I speak to him. Very interesting gentleman to speak to, and that is how you talked about money within the video games and how you transacted there. And there, the most interesting thing about, and this is, I'm going to draw it back to value here, because within that gaming space, everything you bought, right, had a value.
Absolutely.
And the people you interacted with defined that value.
Absolutely.
And for all and sundry who transacted in that environment, value was that virtual currency. It was not Bitcoin or the people's money. It was not private sector. It was not a central bank defined fiat currency. It was something else.
Yep.
You placed value on it.
Yes.
Right?
And many people do.
And many people
in fact,
do. Exactly.
Virtual currencies, I'm talking about the ones that, if you ever grew up playing World of Warcraft or any of these kind of massive online playing games, or even web-based games, the economies of some of these video games are far larger than actual countries' GDPs.
Yeah.
And I can't fathom to think the size of the virtual economies that exist in all of these games. Just look at, I know that for Candy Crush, for example, this is a handheld game. I know kids who spend like $2,000 a month just buying those coins. So when you fathom the virtual worlds and all the massive online role-playing games, you're talking about a huge amount of money that most of the world just decide, well, this is just a video game, so it's not really valuable. But the reality, back to the concept of money, I think money is an idea. It's whatever we want to believe it is at the end of the day, right? It's consensus. So to be honest, you ask anyone, brutally honest, why the hell gold is worth money? I don't know. It's yellow, it's shiny, it's nice, and it just feels, it's common consensus that we come to. Why is Bitcoin worth any money? Because we all agree that it has a certain value. So at the end of the day, money is just a belief. Whether this piece of paper has any value, it's all what we believe in. But sometimes I think if we know the possibility of believing anything is possible, then money could literally be anything. We used to use seashells, we used to use pigs, salt. Anything is possible.
If I might interject, I agree to that to an extent. Gold, from in the ancient and the Middle Ages world, was a metal, which is really cool, and it didn't corrode, which is really good, and it had a low melting temperature, which is really good. It meant that if I gave you a piece of gold, you could make a bowl that would hold water, and if it had this value, it wouldn't go away. And as a metal, it was better than other things. It was pretty because it was a color of sunshine. It had an intrinsic value. So a seashell, if you could establish a consensus basis for the value of a seashell. You could get a group of people in a room, and they all say, well, look, the seashell is worth with 2 goats or whatever, and that would be the value if they all agree to say, okay, we'll do that, and that could be your medium of exchange as a consensus, and what I call network effect, which is the basis for a Bitcoin. But I think that there are other ways that gold was an actual value. Even to this day, it's a super high conductivity. It's great for electrical connections because of the lack of corrosiveness. It's utilized all over the world for industrial purposes. So it has a real value still as a material. But for using it as the basis for global money, it's too small of a supply.
Well, I agree with you.
The globe, we're 7.5 billion plus people, so we can't. So it doesn't work anymore. So that's one of the things that I worked on is how to solve that problem in the general case for a larger market space.
Okay. Well, with gold, okay, I'm not against gold. I love gold, so I'm for gold. I'm explaining kind of at a different concept. Think about the concept of
The
money.
belief in community.
So right now, gold. Okay,
value.
gold is commonly agreed upon by humans that it's worth something, right? But many people, if you ask them what's the price of 1 ounce of gold, they don't know. Many people don't.
But I think more so to it, if the price of 1 ounce of gold doesn't correlate to its actual utility in the market, and the price of gold right now is based off of the fact that it's a scarce metallic resource. Yes, it has utility for electronics and microprocessors, and it's useful in jewelry, and it doesn't corrode, right? So we can all agree to that. And like Jason, I'm a massive believer in gold, and I hold gold as an asset class. I believe in deflationary-based scarce assets. But I think the concept Jason's trying to raise is that communities give value to specific asset classes to allow them to form what we consider to be money. And while seashells were originally what were used, and at one point the tulips were used, there are better forms of money out there, and there's some core principles around money like fungibility, utility, etc. And I think what it really boils down to today is what is the superior monetary solution, and what does define money to be better for society in today's world. And I know that you're a massive believer in the commodity-based asset classes, but at the end of the day, it really boils down to a mathematical principle of accounting. And none of those systems come even close to the record-keeping system and the self-settlement system that we know as Bitcoin.
I think that the Bitcoin is a great, innovative thing, and it's demonstrated its value and its longevity, even if it's less than 10 years or about 10 years. But I would say, if I could just sort of elaborate a little bit about what we're actually utilizing the free market.
Yeah.
We have we peg the price of the free market to a basket of 20 commodities. That's being the four major commodities group: energy, metals, food, and then what I call clothing, which is cotton and rubber and wool and such.
Any water in there?
No water, no.
The best useful asset in the world, man.
But it is a great asset. The market, the global market price of water is not really set, and it's
glad we don't have an OPEC kind.
But it's also heavily regulated throughout the world. But that's another issue altogether. But nonetheless, so establishing a peg to the way I look at it, what we're trying to get to is restore stability to money. Like I said, for 5 generations, the money was stable in value. By connecting the price of a currency to the physical world through the basis of goods, you're really trying to connect that price of the currency to the goods. So that's the stability, not the price of a currency relative to another fiat currency.
Well, Bitcoin.
But let me just so since most goods are made of raw materials, and most raw materials are commodities, we can make that connection with a huge daily volume of commodities in a way that we don't have to worry about the supply and demand effects on any individual commodity, because those sort of average out. If there's a rains in Colombia and it harms the coffee crop, it won't affect that might drive the price of coffee up, but it's not going to affect the price of iron ore in Australia. So if you have a disparate basket as a basis of the assets to which the currency is pegged, then I think you have a more stable currency that today, when you have a free market, that's worth the same money as it is today in 5 years or 10 years.
The fundamental problem with commodities is the ability to track their existence. And I think that we've seen that with diamonds, with gold, with ore, with coffee. The coffee industry was highly manipulated just under a decade ago. And
So we solve that problem in a novel manner as well.
by
We don't-
having 20 different commodities,
we don't-
but that's
we
just a scalability
but
issue.
we don't back the currency with commodities. We only peg the price. We put behind the currency a fund that's legally constrained to providing liquidity to the owners and users of the fund, but is invested into finance and assets that are valued on their ability to deliver net returns. So that's a classical means of valuing an asset. A ship is worth 10 times its net revenue, which delivers a 10% return. The same as a building or a company, and with some nuanced issues of valuation or potential growth rates, etc. So it's a different model that we use. We don't provide the assets behind the free market aren't the same as the ones to which it is pegged. So that's a little bit different. But I agree with you in the sense that it would be difficult to back something with it.
So I want to add something to, since we're talking about the future of money. It's very interesting. I think this just happened. I just was reading the news. So we all know the whole WeWork debacle that's going on right now with SoftBank taking over.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing, literally, if you look at WeWork from the time that literally it's just two guys coming to consensus about what a company is worth, because no one really has, no one has really invested in WeWork since so many rounds, and the valuation literally, how do you go from XYZ
40 billion to 8 billion?
40 plus billion to this?
Almost bankrupt.
And you know what just happened?
But that's the same for all commodity markets.
But
Well, they are valued by the market.
But you know what just happened?
You have a hard time gaming the whole of all commodities.
That's just an issue of scalability.
But then I'm saying SoftBank is buying off the CEO's shares for $1 billion,
1.7,
plus another $500 million in the credit line extended, and plus another $200 million, close to $200 million for consulting fees, while relinquishing, basically leaving the board while being observed.
But that's more of a criticism of the idea of belief as a basis for the value.
That's what I'm trying to
say.
say.
That's the core argument. That's the core argument here is that these commodities have a value because of a belief system that's driven behind.
No, that's the opposite. That's the one you're endorsing. You're saying that the WeWork has, that has the belief as the basis. It has a belief because SoftBank endorsed it and the guys that are selling it. So those two people drove that price up and continued rounds. But that's the belief culture that they then promoted and propagated. Now, a commodity, if you want to game 20 different commodities, okay, on which is a 12-month moving average, that's a tough challenge. Coffee is a good example. So you would basically be saying that you wanted to affect the price of a basket of commodities or the free market.
If I may come in there, if you're going to track the price of commodities and use that as a basis of the fundamental premise on which this currency is going to be built on, or this medium of priced or medium of exchange, most commodities are priced and traded in US dollars. Today, US dollar accounts for in excess of 86% of global trade. This whole thing about the US dollar dominance comes from the fact that most countries are forced to open LCs to trade between each other when those countries have nothing to do with US dollars.
Technically, we originally priced the free market based upon using the dollar as a standard on that day. Now it's priced on an amount of each commodity. It has nothing to do with the dollar anymore. So we peg to an amount of the commodity. So it's not, and so then each day, whatever that commodity is selling, we can use dollars or rubles or anything. But and then that will reflect that as the exchange rate between the dollar, ruble, and the free market.
Okay, so
it's a little complicated, but it is these are real problems that you're addressing too.
The problem with commodity, unlike Bitcoin, commodities, let's say coffee beans, right? there are different grades of coffee beans. You cannot say this coffee bean for here and this
True.
coffee bean here is the same price. So there's already a natural
There's
inherent
different
discrepancy.
There's a different inflation
There-
rates
and
as well.
they
I have-
have coffee in,
yeah.
in Japan
Sure.
and coffee in Singapore and coffee in Indonesia
Well,
and coffee in
24 karat
Colombia.
gold and 18 karat gold is not the same.
But
price.
you do make a selection. There is no perfect currency or perfect medium of exchange. But what you're
Bitcoin.
trying to do is make a best shot at it.
Okay.
And then remember what I said in the beginning. It's the private sector. It's not about establishing the currency for the world.
Yeah.
It's about saying, hey, I advocate this free market because we're selling it. We're trying to make it the highest quality of money that we can build. Well, the guy down the road might say, but we have another version or another vision, and that's ours. And let the market decide which
let
money
me
they
take the
want to
other
use,
side
you
of
know?
this.
That's a
Okay.
big opportunity for people.
So the common criticism of the conventional monetary system and so forth has been the fact that there had been quantitative easing, a lot of central bank-led bond buying, and deficit financing and so forth. And this is what you alluded to when you said that money when it's transferred from one generation to another is going to lose value because
It's not backed by anything.
because it's not backed by anything. Okay, fine. But let's face it, in 2008, when the financial crisis was what it was, especially in the US and then to some other parts of the world, like Europe, the central bank reduced interest rates, okay, went ahead, bought bonds in the market, and did all of this with one sole objective in mind, that is to revive the economy, to create demand back in the economy. Okay, every time money markets get stuck, the central bank, as the last lender of resort, comes in, steps in, just like how it's happening now in the US, where the Fed is stepping in the overnight markets to have the repo rates balanced out. Guys, it's great to have a utopian view of what an ideal currency should be, but let's look at let's bifurcate the whether it's going to be Bitcoin or a commodity backed currency or a virtual currency to see what would happen to the monetary policy if I'm having a financial crisis, if the central bank cannot intervene, cannot reduce interest rates, cannot support the banks, cannot create credit to augment demand. Who is going to play that role?
Okay, this really
Code. That's who plays this code. Plays this role. So right now we're dealing with a situation where those rules are set in code, and that's the rules that we're playing by with Bitcoin. You have to remember that when you talk about
I thought you said God, but now you meant code. Okay.
yeah, well, I guess you can look at the two of the same thing, right? God's the perfect programmer. But with that being said, you're talking about a fake system here, Gary. You're talking about kicking the can down the road. That's what they're doing right now. They're kicking the inevitable fact is the financial system is in the worst shape it's ever been in history of mankind. Today, right now, we're talking about a situation where where we're influencing the market in a way that eventually it's going to collapse, and we're just tricking ourselves. And I honestly believe that the 2008 financial crisis, what's coming for us in the next step is going to make that look like a kid's playground. And with that being said, I think that one of the greatest things that we have is an immutable ledger system that's backed by triple ledger entry bookkeeping. And that type of system
Brilliant.
is protocol level based. And those rules are enforced on a consensus based algorithm. You
Okay.
can't beat that.
Let me,
but
can I put
just
it?
one
Okay,
thing,
go
if
ahead.
I may jump in. Okay, man writes code. Okay, this monetary system is driven by people.
Yes.
Right? These policies were made by people. Right? Code also is written by humans.
Yes.
Right? Which means, right, the difference between this and that is that code cannot be changed. So you're going to limit the supply.
It can be changed by consensus.
Exactly.
By consensus.
This
whereas this can
fork
be
the
changed by
chain.
centralized man.
Fork the chain, and
Okay,
then so what? How many chains have come
Let's
now?
segue a little bit away.
Longest chain wins. It's always been the rules.
Wait. That's this paradigm. But let's consider maybe.
Okay.
Remember, the Bitcoin is great, but it isn't necessarily the end, the best avenue. So let me paint another scenario. Today we have the U.S. monetary system determined to an extent by the Fed, the ECB, and the European monetary system, the BOJ and the BOE, etc. All right, so those are the monetary systems. But you also have the Bitcoin monetary system. Well, the Bitcoin monetary system, when the Bitcoin's going up in value, then everybody holds it, so they're not spending it. Okay, that's bad.
That's not true.
Well, they're not spending it very much for goods and services.
The wealth effect dictates otherwise.
Could do. But okay, so all right, that's fair enough. But let's just think about it so imagine in a future world, a world of many monetary systems. When the free market monetary system is functioning, maybe the Chinese monetary system isn't working so great. But the Chinese people might be, depends on the CPP or CCP, but they might, there might be the Chinese people that are using the free market monetary system or the Bitcoin monetary system or XYZ coin monetary system.
Okay.
So by having the market decide which monetary system it wants to operate in, it could be like, hey, business is lousy over in XYZ. Let's go do business on ABC today. I have good credit over there. I can work in that system. And so this means that things are rosy in ABC world, in ABC monetary system. The traders of saffron and wheat it's great. The world is wonderful. But while in the US they might have QE'd out the noses, and on the asset prices of inflation, nobody can make any money because they're too overinflated. So it's a different idea. Remember, we're here in the beginnings, we're a tiny little piece of the globe market. Somebody said today 7 trillion are transacted every day, and what was the market today in bitcoins? A couple hundred billion. It's nothing. So we're in the very beginnings of this enterprise. So we need to consider that some possible things that we've never seen before might happen with the emergence of innovative technologies and alternatives.
Well, in regarding to you talking about people holding Bitcoin, not spending, it's not true. I mean, I personally have sold Bitcoins at like pennies because without these transactions, Bitcoin would never be the thousands of dollars it is worth today. But during that price discovery process, the only thing that has increased is the number of users who are aware of Bitcoin and the number of users who have Bitcoin. And that's why I believe that hoarding Bitcoin isn't about not the unwillingness to spend it. It's about the belief that my Bitcoin in the future is going to be worth $1 million each. And I'm saying that now. One Bitcoin will equal $1 million each. But by then, do you really want to trade your Bitcoins for dollars? Because maybe we'll just end up spending Bitcoins because I can already spend Bitcoins directly to get goods and services pretty much anywhere in the world.
Okay.
Without need to
Okay, fine.
And
But-
Jared, I just want to step in here and just say something. It's like, let's throw out Bitcoin out the window. It's the concept of my background's in information technology, which includes a lot of maths and physics in that mix. And when you look at the systems that we have today, whether it's commodity-backed currencies or Federal Reserve or central bank-backed fiat currencies, the principles driving what Bitcoin is came about by looking at these systems, looking at the inferior aspects of them, the inability to see transparency in them. When was the last time the Fed was audited? We can go down this road all day long. When was the last time that we had a system that was permissionless, allowed everyone to participate on the exact same playing field, that wasn't dictated by one man, woman, or child, wasn't controlled by a single entity or government, was open and available across the paradigm of this tool we have called the internet? Fiat systems were not built with the internet in mind. Mm-hmm. The internet did not, up until Bitcoin came along, have a payment module that plugged right in. This is the first time we've seen it. And while it may not be the full-on future, while it may be something superior, it has set the tone for what we should expect monetary systems to look like. And what we have today in our financial markets, the concept of money, fiat-driven inflationary-based systems, commodity-backed systems, they're a farce. They're a failure. They've failed us time and time again. Some people say, oh, Bitcoin's price is volatile. What timeline are you looking at? Because if I look at the timeline of where I've been involved in the Bitcoin community and field, it looks pretty damn good. Because the volatility has been in the thousands of percentages rising. But if you look at inflation-based systems, talk to me about the US dollar value 20, 30, 50 years ago. Because that 10-cent Coca-Cola that I bought, that my mom bought when she was 10 years old, she's paying $2 for it today. So we really need to start opening our minds to, and I don't want to go down the road right now of bashing central banks. I think that they have their place in the world. I think that society needs its protection. I think that there's users that will always want to use their national currency. And to correct you on a mistake you made earlier, I'm not the CEO of BIT. I was a CEO for several years and I resigned as CEO.
Okay.
But with that being said, and while I designed a system that focused on central bank digital currencies in its early days and its infancy, my belief has always been, and the reason I designed that system was to create interoperability between fiat currency systems and Bitcoin. And that was the reason, driving force of why I created central bank digital currencies. A lot of people aren't aware of that. But that's the truth. Because I believed there needed to be a way to transition from the old to the new. And there was no other way than watching the system break. And I remember speaking to Dr. Patrick Byrne in depth when he made our investment in us. We didn't want to see the system break. We didn't want to see billions of people get burnt. So we needed a transitional system. We needed interoperability. I can take cash out of my pocket right now, and I can't plug it into the digital world. But I can take a central bank digital currency and plug it into the digital world.
Yeah.
And that would flow right in to what I believe to be a superior monetary solution. And the reason I believe it's superior, once again, is because it's not controlled by any one person. It's open and accessible to all.
Yeah, but
it's permissionless.
I challenge the Bitcoin.
What are you planning to build?
No, there's supply control. I'd say there's 70%. I'm not sure on the numbers, but 70%
divisible
is held by
100 million
whales.
units.
You know, then a good 30 or 40% is gone because it's lost forever.
And in deflationary
it's very subject to manipulation.
Sure,
by,
but let me give you one fact. One fact.
Okay, go ahead.
50% of the global wealth is held by 1% of the people on the planet. Okay?
But how does that... Okay.
But the next thing about deflationary systems and systems like Bitcoin is when you spend your Bitcoin, you can't go and just print more. Unlike inflationary-based systems, which is what protects the wealth right now.
BCH.
No. You can't argue that a fork
BCH
equals inflation. It does not. So on that concept, let me ask you one simple question, Gary. You're introducing a free market solution of a currency that's backed by a series of commodities.
Kevin.
Kevin. Forgive me. What do you propose to build that system on?
On a digital paradigm.
On what type of digital paradigm?
Well, it's called a node chain, but
a node chain. And how do I trust that node chain? How do I know you're not muting it or editing the records?
No, our philosophy.
No, let's not move away from this.
No. I'm answering your question exactly. Our philosophy on that issue is not a forking foundation. Our pursuit is a static body of code that people will be able to know through hash algorithms. So our pursuit is, hey, when you buy a home, do you want to let the guy that poured the cement come back and say, I got to make a little change? You need a home and it's got to be yours and nobody can touch it. And the same with the wealth that you hold in a digital currency, it has to be yours. It has to be, no one can touch it. And so but we can't do that. We got to, technology is not an overnight deal. You don't have an idea, turn it into a technological reality, and then deliver it to the market, and it's perfect at the get-go. So we know that about software. It takes time to mature.
You're planning to use a blockchain-esque type technology to drive your platform?
Fundamentally, and it will eventually be a static body of code. It'll be a core of static code upon which will not be changeable. And we
So
can,
if I were to summarize here, okay, go
Before
ahead.
you summarize,
Yeah.
this was my point.
Yeah.
That the winning aspect of Bitcoin and why we are all here, and I'll repeat this again and again and again until everybody listens and realizes what the truth is. And the truth is immutability. The inability to edit, forge, delete, mess with, tamper, or break records. And that is why we are here. That's why his system is possible from a concept perspective. And Bitcoin happens to be the most secure ledger system in the entire globe. It's the most secure and strongest supercomputer in the entire world that we know today. That concept of proof of work, you can't displace the amount of energy, the physics behind that concept. So with that being said, you have a system that allows us to have a permissionless, open, all-inclusive, consensus-driven algorithm that is secure. It's that security that allows us to look at the evolution of money and realize that there's a superior system. And even with platforms like what Kevin is proposing, they'll inevitably need to go onto the main anchor chain, which is that of Bitcoin's ledger system.
but
Okay, so
we would say
So,
it's got
okay,
other
so-
problems.
so
Too
you
slow,
have,
lack of scalability.
It's not. It depends on its utility.
Yeah,
If
but,
it's
you know,
it's
there's
slow
other
if you
issues.
it's slow if you want to run 1 billion transactions per second, then you're doing Bitcoin wrong. It's scalable. It's not scalable if you want to include every last transaction under the sun on top of it. Its utility comes in the form of where you can hash transactions and store them. Its true value comes where you can validate the integrity of a data set. You can't displace that.
yeah, but okay.
I say it's a great prototype.
No, I
That's how I look at it.
I
It was
agree
just
with
brilliant
I
prototype
agree
because
with
it
your
demonstrated
summary
the
on the
concept.
security, the immutability, brilliant. Okay, but that's the underlying technology that enabled it, which is blockchain.
My friend, blockchain cannot exist without proof of work. And anyone that tries to fool you otherwise and say, oh, I built a blockchain technology, get out of the room, please. Because what you have built is a permission ledger or some sort of technology that does not align with the concept of what a blockchain is. A blockchain is Bitcoin. Anyone else right now has been fooling the market and been trying to ride the wave of one of the greatest inventions we've seen since the internet. And I'm honestly sick of it. I'm sick of hearing it. I'm sick of hearing people say, I built a blockchain technology. Where's the security and aspects behind that? What are you truly talking about here right now? Because blockchain isn't just a database. Okay? The concept of proof of work and the ability to have a system that is one block stored after another, verified by Merkle trees and Merkle roots, and backed by a individual unit called the Satoshi. That is the blockchain. Anything else that came after that? Well,
Okay, so
another
let
another
me
invention.
come in here. Okay, now that's the technological aspects, the merits of the underlying technology. Great. Okay, now let's look at the bits on the economic side. Okay, how does the monetary system work? Why do we talk about M1, M2, M3, money supply? Why do we talk about inflation, interest rates, all these things about demand, supply, and all those basic concepts that are core economics, right? Now, technology, great. Okay, but tell me, for a layman, I'm coming into this room, I have zero idea about what blockchain is, what Bitcoin is, and things like that. Tell me, today if I'm going to enter the Bitcoin space and I'm going to buy a coin at $8,000, right? For all the reasons that you mentioned, okay? And I'm going to go what by Jason was on about, that is, in the future, it's going to be worth more, okay? So I'm going to enter it, convert my fiat into a coin, into a Bitcoin. Now, why should I buy it at 8,000? Right? I'm going to buy it from somebody else at 8,000. Okay? That means somebody who started 8 years ago started at $1 some cents, and today it's worth 8,000. Okay? I come from a conventional world. I'm looking at it, okay, assets go up in value in dollar terms or in any other currency terms because something has happened within that system. Maybe it has expanded, inflation has come, or some value has been created. When it comes to Bitcoin, oh, if it's gold, right, what's my cost of mining? Say $960 today. I'm buying it at $1,500 because there's a demand and supply. Somebody comes in, adds value, I buy it at $1,500. But if I'm going to buy Bitcoin at 8,000, okay, how am I going to base my value system? Now, it's not now the reason why I ask that is because in conclusion, what we want to figure out here is, or arrive at or go towards is, what is the future of money? Okay, so for a generation who is going to be introduced to this system, could be our kids, right, who are going to look at it, maybe start at 8,000, could start at 10, could start at 3, I don't know, right? Why should they take it at that price? Why don't they start at 0 or 1?
Well, first of all, Bitcoin's not at $0, it's at $8,000. And when we would have bought Bitcoin, I bought it every cycle, whether it was 20,000 or a couple of dollars. You have to look at some of the metrics of the system. The amount of user wallets on the market, the amount of exchanges, the amount of regulators, the amount of banks, but more importantly, and the biggest aspect of it, is the health of the network, the security of the network.
Yeah,
and that is the mining aspect of it,
No,
which has been the healthiest it's ever been in the history of the subject.
That's great for Bitcoin's ecosystem. I am a layman. I'm walking in. I don't want to know anything about this.
Then you shouldn't buy it.
All I want to know
Shouldn't
is
invest.
No. All I want to know is, if I want to buy this equipment, I need a medium of exchange.
Yes.
I need a currency. That's all I need. I don't need groundbreaking technology. I need a simple solution to buy a pound of bread, to buy this equipment. That's all I care. I'm not interested in the mining ecosystem, right? That's great. I'm not going to take any credit away from that. But what I'm looking at is, if it's going to be future of money, it needs to be something everyone can understand, everyone can relate to. It needs to be simple. Great, commodity backed, you're trying to preserve value, great. Don't expect me to spend 30 minutes to understand why I should buy it.
Well,
but when you tell me it's backed by the government I voted for, or the country that I live in, or rules that are part of this land that I live in, I take comfort from that. Okay, when I say I don't mean myself, but I'm talking about
that
the
going to
general
Venezuela?
public.
When you see the free market, for example, not
Yeah.
today, because we started at 65% backing and move up.
Yeah.
But when you see the free market, let's say 3 years down the road, and you see that it's 97.2% assets behind it, and that these are held and valued at market rates, and and audited in an irrevocable trust, so that people can't be affected without being subject to criminal violation of laws, because legal codes are established. So when you see real values behind the money, that's pretty easy to explain. Now I'm putting a lot of detail in there because there are nuances that this group.
Okay,
let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
First of all, anyone that's coming to invest, for my kids, I wouldn't advise them to put their money in one thing at all: land, Bitcoin, and gold. Deflationary assets, but that's my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
But it's not investment; it's about using it as money.
Now, when you're looking to use it as money, I use Bitcoin every single day, and there's no other time that I have any other system. If you don't take my Bitcoin, I don't spend with you. And I've been getting through my life for the last 3 to 4 years amazingly on that concept.
Me, 5 and 6.
And
You do it too.
I'm banked.
You do it.
you're correct. And
We're
and
free people,
I use it
man.
once a week.
And at the end of the day,
It's a choice.
at the end of the day, it's a choice. It's a choice of what that user. We talked about this at the start. What the community is willing to accept in trade.
Yeah.
So it's there's no way that you can explain to someone off the street in a simple concept what fiat currency is, what commodity-based currencies are, what decentralized driven algorithm-based
But
currencies
isn't that
are.
the beauty of that system? That is,
There is
I take
no
a
system that is simple to
there's-
explain. The
yeah,
only reason
there's-
that fiat's simple to
there's
explain
different people.
is because it's been prevalent in society,
Yeah.
and people choose to not look at the intricacies of what's behind that paper money. And that's the flaw with society today. We don't understand what really is paper money.
Let's
And a
ask
lot
about
of people are ignorant on that
Argentina,
concept.
for example. Let's take
Yeah.
a country.
Or Mongolia or Venezuela.
Yeah, but well, let's just pick one as Argentina.
Okay.
So Argentina has their society has endured a demise of their currency multiple times within a generation. So for those people, money that keeps its value is really critical. Money that's volatile is a little bit scary. Money that's stable and will last a generation or 10 years, and that means something to the guy on the street. He doesn't need a dissertation to explain it. All he wants to know is that it'll work.
Future of money, what is it?
Future of money, I believe. Let's assume that, fine, we're talking about Bitcoin or not Bitcoin, but I believe, personally, I think Bitcoin currently is the strongest currency in the world, not necessarily by market size, but rather by, name me one currency that is stronger than Bitcoin right now.
Bitcoin is priced in US
No,
dollars.
no,
So
no,
what
no,
am
not
I
in
going
terms
to
of
do?
market cap.
So
or
what am I
cap.
going to?
No.
What's my basis here?
No,
The principles behind it.
Yeah.
Principles behind it. Let's assume.
What are the principles of the US dollar, the world's strongest currency system?
Let's look at a situation here, okay, where I don't understand the technicalities behind it. Okay, let's assume that. How am I going to base my argument on the fundamentals that governs it when one Bitcoin is priced in $1 or in US dollars?
No,
Bitcoin-
US dollars are priced in Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is never priced in US. Bitcoin, when it was born, there was no correlation to any money system whatsoever. We chose to peg, to use dollars, or to, because the thing about
Can I buy a pound of bread in
Yes.
Bitcoin?
Yes.
Like I want to
Yes,
know.
of course. You can buy anything I can buy with cash.
Okay.
I can buy with Bitcoin.
Yeah, but then
Anything.
why don't they say 1 pound of bread, 2 Bitcoin? Instead, if they say
You know why?
1 pound of bread is X number
Because
of dollars,
it's easier for the
convert
it's
it to
easier for
Satoshi.
the market to swallow. I price.
So what is
everything
the
as
future
Satoshis.
of money?
The future of money is the ability for a user to complete a transaction no matter where they are in the world. And that
Yeah.
transaction can be completed with a specific asset class that transcends that of governments and borders. That's the future of money.
Disintermediated transfer of money, peer to
Well, I have a
peer.
different, not similar along that line, but where I think, okay, let's just go beyond even that. I think, let's imagine today the four of us are sitting here. We have Bitcoins. We all have access to a universal system, which we all agree right now Bitcoin's $8,000. And maybe, and to be honest, if you're not bullish on Bitcoin for the next 10, 20 years, if you tell me that you think Bitcoin's going to die, then let's end this conversation, because I think we're all here because we believe somewhat that Bitcoin is going to be more valuable in the future. Or else, I'm just going to throw in my hat. I don't know what else to do, right?
Yeah.
So I think we all believe that Bitcoin is going to be valuable, and now it may not necessarily have to be the dominant one coin that rules the whole world. But what I do see the possibility of, imagine today, Gabriel.
This is not about the merits of Bitcoin. This is
No,
about the
money.
future of money.
I am talking about the future.
What is that future?
Satoshi have shown he created something, and he's given it to the world. We looked at it, we believe in it, and we use it. What is the fiat money? Fiat money didn't give people really a choice. It kind of like, if we really had the choice today not to use the USD, do you think people really use it? I think if you've given the people the choice in the first place, they actually have the freedom to pick. Like me, I was born in China, so I was forced to be an atheist. I didn't even have the privilege of understanding, to have the privilege of believing in a religion, because it just didn't exist for me. For people who are born in the Western society, maybe they're born into a Catholic family and they're just ingrained with Catholicism because they have to, not because they had a choice. So if you give people a choice of money, and today we have that choice. If you want to be going down the centralized path, and I think central bank issued digital currency is going to be a huge thing, maybe Libra is going to be a big thing, whatever that may be, that's the path that we're going to go down to, and there will be people who follow that path. But then there's the decentralized path, which maybe it's a lonely road, but there will be people on that road, and I think we are heading into a different direction to make a better world.
So it means there will be multiple pockets of systems.
Absolutely.
Look,
And they need
central
to
bank, let's get back to the concept here really quickly. Let me just wrap up by saying,
Yeah.
central bank digital currencies are critical right now for the way our monetary systems are moving, and to allow innovation to take place to bring on financial inclusion in a secure, responsible, and stable way. I think central bank digital currencies are going to be the future. But I don't believe that central bank digital currency systems
will be the only one.
well, I definitely don't believe they're going to be the only one.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that we're going to be limited in one commodity or the other in terms of a currency system. I think we're going to have a plethora of currencies, of currencies, of currencies. But what I do believe in the end is going to happen is there's going to be a system that separates state and finance. And I think that's what we're seeing with something like Bitcoin. And I believe that's critical right now with the advent of the internet, where we have the largest country in the world, but it's missing its national currency. And the internet needs that. And I believe the most fitting currency system in the world for the largest country in the world is Bitcoin. And that's where my belief system is being driven from. And I'll stop there.
Okay, now my turn now, huh?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So from my perspective, a central bank currency that's digital means that some central body can decide tomorrow that they're a little bit short and we're going to strip everyone of 10%. That's what a central bank currency means to me in the digital world.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me finish the vision here. So before these guys start throwing things at me.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kevin.
So
Yeah.
the rest
You did walk into the lion's
That's
den,
right.
though.
But okay, so the rest of the idea here. So I see a person with a wallet that can have any kind of digital currency in it he wants, and that he can go make a transaction with anyone else in a seamless way, in an extremely secure environment where in the best case scenario he chooses the money that delivers the best deal for him. So he uses his money. Everyone else accepts whatever money they want to accept. The transactions are immediate, scalable, but there could be a value behind the money that he uses so that he gets something better than a fiat paper.
So what do I tell the audience
until the government
of dog
seizes
sense?
until the government seizes his commodities or some army or corrupt party.
Okay, so for our Talk Sense audience, what's the conclusion? What's the conclusion? Future of money, technology enabled. Okay,
Absolutely.
pockets of
Not necessarily.
system.
Decentralized.
Decentralized and centralized and different systems and semi-centralized or semi-decentralized.
If you want to be diplomatic about it, the future of money is
Wide-scale
private
market
money, central bank money, and people's money.
There you
If you
go.
want to be diplomatic about it, right? And if you want to sit on the fence and play that game, sure, that's the future of money. But ultimately, if you really do want to jump off the fence and take a side, money of the internet is the future. And there's only one money of the internet.
But money
right
of the internet doesn't have to be one kind.
no, it could
Isn't
be
that
several.
something we can agree
I
on?
definitely
Because money of the internet doesn't have to be one kind. That's the variety. That's the diversity we live in. And this internet is what has now enabled us to bring that up to the world. And if we are going to celebrate that variety, that diversity, we also need to accept that there are going to exist many systems.
Billions of
Exactly
systems.
like what you said.
But there will
which
be
need
one
to-
superior one because of immutability, the proof of work, superior system.
Diversity.
Well-
we need to accept all systems. So,
By
can we
the way,
conclude?
I'm a bag holder of many different cryptocurrencies, and I love
There-
many of them.
there you
and
go.
I hold many different fiat currencies as well. So
Yeah.
don't let me throw off the audience.
Yeah.
in thinking that I just chose to play devil's advocate on this.
We need that. We need
I
that.
just chose
yeah.
to take a stance on
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
and I argued that stance.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about, I mean, I don't know, but
And,
the
and,
future of
and,
money is
and
very,
let's close with that because I'm
Yeah.
sure yours is the philosophical view on things. And let's put a hat on it.
I don't know. I mean, I think for as far as humans have existed, the concept of money. I mean, if you all recall the first time you come into the concept of money as a child, what was that? And I think as we're born into this world, if you think about giving a 1-year-old or 6 months or 3 months-year-old baby $1 million of cash on the ground, and the baby has no idea what that is. So to be honest, money doesn't really exist for us until we are living in this world where we're forced to adopt this concept that we need to. And I think the money, in effect, earlier today I was talking about in slavery, and it's true because we're born into this bondage where we need to work some people work their ass off. They don't even have the privilege of sitting here and be able to talk to they don't even ever seen a computer before. They don't even have the luxury of having clean drinking. Like, there's so many people who are living in absolute disgusting conditions. Why? Because they are just unfortunate enough not to have any benefit of the money system as we know it. They're basically excluded from our society because of the concept of money. Mm-hmm. And I think that's wrong. Now, I'm not advocating a utopian dream where everybody should just have the money. That doesn't work either. But why not think about, and the biggest problem is, it's the one problem that technology, again, that cannot solve. Satoshi can't solve, Bitcoin can't solve, governments can't solve, human greed and ego. Our own egos about ourselves, and I have ego as well, but also at times, if you can experience thinking from perspective not about yourself, think about the greater good and really thinking about being good to people, we will operate at different frequencies.
And that we all can agree on. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.